welcome to Relish Books. Today I am talking about a few works by Paulo Coelho. He's best known for The Alchemist, by far his most famous and popular work. And I thought about reviewing that, but I would definitely need to reread it before making a review because it's been a long time since I read it, and I just wanted to read some new stuff of his because I didn't realize until recently just like how many other books that he has. So I wanted to read some new stuff, but I will reread The Alchemist at some point and make a review of it because I think I remember liking that one pretty well, or at least thinking that it was interesting and worth reading. Some of these other ones that I checked out, I feel like not so much. He is a very distinctive writer, has a very distinctive style, and I can understand people who would love his work. Personally, it's not my favorite, I guess. But yeah, I'm just going to talk about a couple of these that I read, some things that I disliked, and a couple of things that I did like, I guess. Aleph, I didn't finish. I just started it. I read it last of these, and I was like, you know what? I feel like this author is he's very slow paced. His books are short, but they're they're slow paced. They really are an experience of the mind having to be very engaged. So it's not just like a story you can just pick up and read. I feel like The Alchemist was more, but generally all his books that I've read so far are about a character or characters seeking spiritual or religious experiences and kind of going on these journeys of the heart and mind, and it's very I don't know, it's very heavy in a way. So I am putting a pause on Aleph. I didn't read very far into it, enough to get an idea of what it was going to be about, but I was kind of like, you know what? Not right now. And then The Archer, again, I just grabbed these at the library, not knowing what any of them were really about. This turned out to be not a novel, but really it felt like a poetry anthology or a set of proverbs. It's about this master of the way of the bow talking about the way of the bow. And so there's like a little story at the beginning, a little story at the end, but most of it is it's all just these little proverbs. So it's just like on every page, it's just like a little bit. It took me about 20 minutes to read, and I didn't love it. I didn't think that it was anything mind-blowing or really special, but it was fine. There were some good thoughts. I mean, I love poetry, but it wasn't like pristine if you're viewing it in that way. And if you're viewing it as like a set of proverbs, it was like, I don't know. It was fine. Nothing really special, in my opinion. And then this one, which is a novel, By the River Pedra, I Sat Down and Wept. This was a very odd book. I feel like it was divided into these kind of two different not plot lines, but two very different ideas that it was exploring. On the one hand, it was exploring these religious ideas, and on the other hand, it was exploring these characters falling in love and kind of choosing between those things, as it follows this young woman who is going on this spur of the moment trip with her childhood sweetheart, and he's struggling with making the choice whether to pursue the path that he feels like he's called to, this religious calling, or settling down, marrying her, and having a normal life. So he's like torn between these things, and she's torn between going back to her very certain, predictable lifestyle, or like surrendering to this love story. So it's exploring these two different things at the same time, and while she's falling in love, she's also revisiting the faith of her childhood and accepting all kinds of new ideas, accepting some of these ideas that he's presenting. So there's these two very different things interwoven that they're exploring. Basically, these revolutionary spiritual ideas and falling in love with each other. Overall, I really did not like it because the whole religious side of it to me was very, to me personally, it was very out there. They're just, they're chasing experiences that fulfill their emotions. They're totally emotionally based. And the problem with that, obviously, is that emotions can change all the time. So it's like if you're just going off of these feelings that you're having, it's not very stable. It's very fluid. And that's something that was frustrating in the book too, was like those experiences that, can be off again, on again. That's how she was going back and forth in her mind about whether she wanted to choose to love this man or not. And that was really frustrating because it felt contradictory. It was like, okay, one day she's like, yes, maybe I'll give in and just like love him. And then the next day she's like, oh no, can't do that. It just felt back and forth, and it was frustrating. I do know that is, to a certain extent, that can be realistic when you're thinking about whether you want to be with someone. And maybe one day, I relate to that a little bit. If you're a very indecisive person, maybe one day you think you've overcome your fears, you think you've overcome your doubts, and you're like, yes, I've overcome those things, I can go all in, and then the next day you're like fearful again. So I think that that's not a totally unrealistic thing, but in a book it was getting pretty tedious. So yeah, that combined with I wasn't really into the love story, definitely wasn't into all the other stuff. So there wasn't really a lot for me in the book. I do enjoy reading his writing style, feeling his slow-paced, his thoughtfully phrased sentences. I enjoy his writing. It has that feeling of being a translated work, which I like. I like reading something that feels translated, where you can tell, even though it's in English, you can tell that the language that it was written in is different from ours. At least I'm pretty sure it was translated. I didn't look up who translated this. I'm sure it says. Let me check real quick. Okay, translated by Alan R. Clark. So I do really like reading stuff that I know has been written in another language, and it gives it a different flavor almost. But overall, yeah, I really didn't enjoy the book. I almost didn't make it through. The only reason I kept going was because it was so short, because really it was just mind-numbingly tedious to me, honestly. But there are a couple, amongst all this stuff, that I was like, I just can't get on board with this. This is super weird. Amongst all of that, there were a couple of really startlingly moments of insight into relationships and into how your mind works when you're in a relationship that he put in a way that I've never heard anybody put so well. So there were several moments like that, but one in particular was so accurate. I was like, I have to share that. So this part where she's thinking about trying to pass the time till he comes back, and this observation that she makes. This was the first lesson I had learned about love. The day drags along, you make thousands of plans, you imagine every possible conversation, you promise to change your behavior in certain ways, and you feel more and more anxious until your loved one arrives. But by then you don't know what to say. The hours of waiting have been transformed into tension, the tension has become fear, and the fear makes you embarrassed about showing affection. And I was like, that is exactly what it feels like. I don't know how many times I have had experienced that exact process when you're thinking, about trying to change certain things that you want to say, planning to show affection, and throughout the day, that building tension that then creates embarrassment. I've never heard anyone put that more perfectly and more exactly, something that I at least have experienced over and over again. but didn't necessarily recognize it that way until I read it. I love when that happens, when you read something and you realize that it's identifying something in your life that you hadn't been able to quite identify or to put into words, and you're like, oh, I see that now, I understand that better. So yeah, there were a couple of moments like that maybe made the book worth reading, maybe. Other than that, though, for the most part, it was just, in my opinion, pretty much just total nonsense. But that's my personal opinion. Obviously, I know he's going into the realm of, well, I don't even know if you would say that it was metaphor, because, yeah, I don't think you'd really say it was metaphor, but more like, this is what these people are experiencing in this moment. So it's kind of like it's for them. But anyway, if you read his books, then you know what I'm talking about. But yeah, I was not a fan. But I do want to reread The Alchemist and see if I see how I feel about it now, because I feel like I remember enjoying it a few years ago, but I don't know if I would feel more like I do about this book, about that one now. So anyway, those are my thoughts about a couple of his works. Thanks so much for watching. I will see you next time. Bye.